The holographic displays flickered above the circular observation deck of Research Station Epsilon, focusing shifting blue light across the curved walls. Dr. Lysic's gelatinous form pulsed with discomfort as she manipulated the controls with her pseudopods. The Zenthian scientist had spent 3 cycles preparing this presentation, and now her bioluminescent patterns betrayed her unease. Across the table, Dr. Elias Carter lounged in his chair, the worn patches on his unsea jacket catching the glow of the gas giant outside the panoramic viewport. He sipped from a steaming mug, real coffee, brewed from beans he'd smuggled past customs. The other researchers had recoiled at the scent, calling it toxic organic sludge. Carter found their reactions hilarious. "Begin playback," Lysic chimed, her voice a series of harmonic vibrations, the central hollow projector whirred to life, displaying a battlefield on some forgotten colony world. Human soldiers in scorched armor advanced through burning ruins, their laughter crackling over the comms. One Marine, Sergeant Kowalski, according to the tags, was grinning as he planted demolition charges on a Vorak bunker. "Observe specimen HFY," Lysic said, her gelatin rippling with distress. Despite sustaining 47% casualties, the human unit exhibits aberrant psychological markers. Carter smirked. "You mean they're not crying in a corner? This is not humorous, Doctor." Lysic's bioluminescence flared violet. The Galactic Mental Health Association has documented over 12,000 similar instances. Human combatants consistently demonstrate excessive optimism in scenarios with statistically 0 survival probability. The footage switched to a starship bridge. A human admiral, grey-haired, face lined with scars, leaned back in his command chair, chuckling as he gave the order to fire the planet. Cracker. The screen flared white as a continent, shattered. "Subject Admiral R. Singh," Lysic continued. Pre-battle psychological profile indicated full awareness of impending doom, yet his final transmission contained this. The audio played, Singh's voice, warm and amused. "Well, boys, looks like we get to go out with a bang. Save me a seat at the bar in hell." Carter took another sip of coffee. And Lysic's form quivered. "This is pathological. No civilized species exhibits such disregard for self-preservation. Our analysts have theorized it may be an evolutionary defect, a misfiring of fear responses." Carter set his mug down with a thunk. The other researchers flinched. "Let me guess," he said, leaning forward. "Your big conclusion is that humans are broken, that we're too stupid to realize when we're doomed." Lysic pulsed uncertainly. "The data suggests the data's wrong." Carter tapped the controls, pulling up a new file. The screen split into 100 smaller feeds, human soldiers, sailors, pilots, all grinning like maniacs in the face of annihilation. "You've been studying us for decades, and you still don't get it. That excessive optimism isn't a bug." He zoomed in on Kowalski's face, frozen mid-laugh as a plasma round whizzed past his helmet. "It is the feature." A hush fell over the chamber. The other scientists, a mix of telepathic Quorvians, chitinous Krellians, and floating Cerellians, exchanged uneasy glances. High Scholar Yillis, his ancient frills trembling, finally spoke. "Explain." Carter grinned. It was the same grin as the soldiers in the footage. "Simple. You think we're crazy because we smile while charging into certain death. That is because you've never faced certain death before." He stood, pacing around the hollow table. "Every species in this room evolved on safe, stable worlds. Your ancestors didn't have to outrun predators or survive ice ages. But Earth," he barked a laugh. "Earth was a meat grinder, and the ones who survived, they were the ones who looked at impossible odds and said, 'Yeah, I like those.'" Lysic's bioluminescence dimmed to a sickly green. "You're suggesting this madness is adaptive." "Damn right." Carter tapped the console again. The footage changed human history, not just the recent wars. Shackled slaves singing on plantations. Protesters laughing as fire hoses blasted them. A lone student standing before a tank in Tiananmen Square. You call it excessive optimism. We call it spite. The room was dead silent. Outside the viewport, the gas giant's storms swirled red and relentless. Carter picked up his coffee. So, yeah, go ahead and publish your little study. Tell the galaxy how broken we are. He took a long sip, meeting each alien's gaze in turn. Just don't be surprised when we start laughing at you too. The holograms flickered. Somewhere in the footage, a human marine was singing off, key as he reloaded his rifle. The scientists stared, their various appendages twitching with unease. Lysick finally found her voice. This changes everything. Carter's grin widened. Damn right it does. The Federation's Senate chambers hummed with the low-frequency chatter of 100 species. Floating delegate pods arranged in concentric rings pulsed with colored lights as representatives adjusted their translation implants. At the center podium, Senator Vrix of the Krellian Dominion unfolded two of his forearms in a gesture of superiority, his chitinous plates gleaming under the chamber's artificial sunlight. Esteemed delegates, Vrix began, his voice dripping with condescension. We are gathered today to address a plague upon the galaxy. Not a virus, not a war, but a mindset. A holographic projection flickered to life above him. Graphs, statistics, and footage of human soldiers laughing amidst orbital bombardments. The so-called excessive optimism of humanity is not merely a curiosity, it is a threat. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Ambassador Naomi Park leaned back in her seat, stirring her coffee with deliberate calm. The world's best mom mug in her hands stood out starkly against the sleek Federation decor. Vrix continued, mandibles clicking. Their psychological profile defies all known norms. While civilized species experience fear, despair, or tactical withdrawal in the face of annihilation, humans laugh. They sing, they crack jokes while their cities burn. This is not resilience. This is insanity. He slammed a clawed fist onto the podium, and insanity is contagious. Naomi took a slow sip of coffee, hiding her smirk behind the rim. Already, we see the effects. Vrix pressed. Our own troops report demoralization when facing human forces. Their refusal to acknowledge defeat spreads like a disease. I propose immediate containment measures, restrictions on human military deployments, psychological evaluations for all human diplomats. And Naomi set her mug down with a clink. The sound cut through the chamber like a gunshot. Senator Vrix, she said, her voice light, almost amused. You're afraid of morale. Vrix's antennae twitched. Ambassador Park, this is not a matter for... No, let's be clear. Naomi interrupted, standing. She tapped a command into her wrist display. You're not scared of our weapons, our tech, our tactics. You're scared because we smile while we beat you. The chamber erupted. Delegates buzzed. Some in outrage, others in uneasy agreement. A Thulian scholar raised a trembling appendage. Ambassador, surely you see the concern. No species in recorded history has maintained such unnatural psychological stability during extermination campaigns. Naomi chuckled. That's because you've never fought a war like we have. She flicked her fingers, and the central hologram shifted, replacing Vrix graphs with a battlefield. New Sydney burning. Human marines advanced through the ruins, their laughter crackling over helmet comms. Watch, Naomi said softly. The footage played. Sergeant Kowalski's voice boomed through the chamber, cheerful as a man on vacation. All right, ladies, let's make this quick. Dinner reservations in hell at 7. Explosions rocked the screen as his squad charged a Vorak bunker, grinning like madmen. Vrix's exoskeleton darkened with agitation. This proves nothing except your species' disregard for. It proves everything. Naomi cut in. She tapped another command. The footage zoomed in on a Marine, bloodied, missing half his armor, high-fiving a comrade as a building collapsed behind them. You call it insanity. We call it winning. Silence. Naomi reached into her pocket and tossed a data chip onto the podium. It skittered to a stop at Vrix's feet. You want to understand human optimism? Watch this. Then tell me if we're the ones who should be afraid. The chamber held its breath. Vrix hesitated, then snatched up the chip with a claw. His four eyes narrowed as he slotted it into the podium's reader. The hologram changed again. This time, it showed a human admiral, grey-haired, grizzled, standing on the bridge of a battleship. Behind him, a planet burned, and he was laughing. "You think this is a war?" the admiral boomed. "This is a Tuesday." Naomi crossed her arms. "Your move, Senator." The hollow projector hummed to life in the center of the Senate chamber, casting flickering blue light across the assembled delegates. The air smelled of ozone and nervous pheromones. Ambassador Naomi Park stood with her arms crossed, watching the alien faces as the footage began. "Playback file Delta 7, she said. "New Sydney, final hours of the Vorak invasion." The projection resolved into chaos, smoke, fire, and the screams of pulse rifles. The camera jerked violently, attached to the helmet of a human marine. Sergeant Jake Smiles Kowalski's voice crackled through the speakers, cheerful despite the apocalyptic scene. "All right, ladies, last one to the LZ buys the drinks." The camera showed him sprinting through shattered streets, his armor scorched from near misses. Behind him, 3 other Marines kept pace, their laughter sharp and bright against the backdrop of collapsing buildings. Senator Vrix's chitinous plates rattled. "This is obscene. They're treating war like some game." Naomi didn't look at him. "Watch." The footage jumped to a makeshift bunker. Kowalski knelt beside a dying Marine, the man's chest a ruin of blood and shattered armor. The wounded soldier coughed, red flecking his lips. "Guess I'm sitting this round out, Sarge." Kowalski grinned, slapping the man's shoulder. "Hell no, Ramirez. You're just getting a head start on securing the afterlife. Save us a seat at the bar." Ramirez laughed, as his eyes glazed over. The camera pulled away, showing Kowalski wiping his face and turning back to the fight. His smile never wavered. The Vorak shock troops appeared next, hulking reptilian berserkers that towered over the humans. Their scales gleamed under the firelight, claws extended. The lead Vorak roared, a sound that shook the Senate chamber's speakers on screen. Kowalski whistled. "Damn, ugly bastards, ain't they?" One of his squad mates, a woman with Jenkins stenciled on her armor, chambered around. "Bet they died just as pretty." The firefight that followed defied all Federation combat doctrine. The humans moved in erratic patterns, flanking where no species should have been able to flank, firing from positions that should have been suicidal. All the while, they joked. They sang snippets of old songs. Kowalski even paused mid-fight to adjust his groin armor, complaining about chafing. The Vorak, bred for war, trained since hatching to dominate through terror, began to falter. Their attacks grew hesitant. The camera caught one backing away. Its slit pupils dilated with something no Vorak had ever felt before. Fear of prey. "Focus fire on big and ugly," Kowalski called. Plasma bolts streaked past his head. He didn't flinch. "Jenkins, light 'em up." Jenkins triggered a shoulder-mounted launcher. The explosion sent Vorak bodies flying. The remaining aliens broke, turning to flee. The Marines whooped. "Told you they'd run," Kowalski said, reloading. "Nothing scares a bully like someone who ain't afraid to smile back." The footage jumped again, a collapsing skyscraper. The Marines sprinting ahead of the debris cloud. Kowalski's camera looked up just in time to see the orbital defense platform break apart in the atmosphere, trailing fire like a falling star. "Command, this is Smiles," he said, breathless, but still grinning. "We lost the sky, but we've got the ground. Awaiting orders." A new voice crackled over the comm, Admiral Hayes. "Fall back to rally point Gamma," and Kowalski. "Yeah, boss. Try not to enjoy yourself too much." The sergeant's laughter filled the Senate chamber as the footage ended. The silence that followed was absolute. Naomi let it stretch, watching the color drain from Vrix's face. High Scholar Yillis was the first to speak, his frills trembling. They were singing while their world burned. Naomi picked up her coffee mug. Took a sip. "We call it morale." "Morale." Vrix spat the word. This is madness. No civilized species behaves this way in the face of annihilation. Naomi set the mug down, the click echoed. That is the thing, Senator. We weren't facing annihilation. We were facing Tuesday. She leaned forward. Play file echo. 9. The Battle of Cerberus Rift. The delegates recoiled. Several made warding gestures. Naomi smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. You wanted to understand human psychology? Keep watching. The circular chamber of the GMHA debriefing room hummed with nervous energy. Alien analysts from a dozen species shifted in their adaptive seating, their appendages tapping nervously on data slates. The holographic playback of human soldiers, laughing through artillery barrages, still flickered in the air, casting eerie shadows across Dr. Yillis's wrinkled frills. The ancient Corvian scholar clutched his ceremonial staff like a lifeline, his 4 eyes blinking in staggered intervals. Dr. Elias Carter stretched his legs out under the table, the creak of his old un-SC jacket loud in the tense silence. He took a long sip from his coffee mug, the one with the chipped rim that read "Psychologists do it with analysis," and grinned at the assembled aliens. So questions. High Scholar Yillis's vocal sac inflated with a wet sound. This cannot be natural cognition. Your warriors display neural patterns consistent with severe psychosis during combat scenarios. The laughing, the singing, even when facing certain death. Carter chuckled. Oh, it is natural. All right. Just not for you. He tapped his temple. See, you all keep calling it excessive optimism, like it is some kind of defect. That is your first mistake. A Xenthian researcher pulsed angry violet light patterns across its gelatinous body. Your own historical records show humans maintaining positive affect during events with Fei mortality rates. The siege of Vesta Colony, the burning of New Moscow. These are not rational responses to existential threats. Carter spun his datapad across the table. It projected a grainy video. Human medics in a bombed, outfield hospital, singing off key while performing amputations by flashlight. You're looking at it backwards. We don't stay happy despite the horror. We stay happy because of it. The chamber erupted in a chorus of alien disbelief. A chittering insectoid from the Zeta Reticuli system slammed 3 claws on the table. That makes no evolutionary sense. Positive reinforcement should correlate with survival probability. Should it? Carter leaned forward, his grin turning sharp. Tell me, Scholar Yillis, when your people face certain death, what happens? Yillis's frills flattened. We enter the sacred stillness, our minds detach from physical form to embrace the coming void. Right, peaceful acceptance, very civilized. Carter tapped the playback controls. The scene shifted to a human dropship crashing on Helios Prime, the crew whooping like it was a roller coaster as flames licked the viewports. We punch the void in the face and laugh while doing it. Dr. Lysic's bioluminescence flickered uncertainly, but the biochemical cost, the stress hormones alone should kill us. Oh, they try. Carter pulled up a neural scan. See this dopamine spike right as the artillery hits. That is not a malfunction. That is the point. He zoomed in on the screaming Vorak shock troops in the background. Your perfect warriors go into battle expecting to win. We go in expecting it to suck, and then we make it our bitch anyway. A stunned silence fell. Yillis's staff clattered to the floor. Carter took another sip of coffee. You all keep searching for some deep secret, some hidden weakness. Here is the truth. Human morale isn't a side effect. It is the weapon that Laughing Marine Planting charges, while his legs get shot off. He is not insane. He is winning. The hologram changed again. Admiral Zhao's famous last stand at the Battle of Cerberus Rift. The grizzled old man was grinning ear to ear as he ordered the Yamato's core breach, singing, "Nearer my God to thee," off-key, as the supernova bloomed behind him. Carter let the footage play through the final, static-filled chorus. You think we're crazy because we smile while the world burns. No, we smile because we know something you don't. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper every alien strained to hear. Fire's just light waiting to happen. Yillis's frills had turned bone. White, the Zenthian researcher, had collapsed into a quivering puddle. Carter stood, stretching his back with an audible pop. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a war to get back to. Turns out the Vorak are learning to scream in harmony. He paused at the door, tossing a data chip over his shoulder. It landed perfectly in front of Yillis. Oh, and you might want to check the appendix on that study, page Fay, the part where we ran the numbers on what happens when you try to break a species that breaks itself for fun. The door hissed shut behind him. In the silence that followed, the only sound was Yillis's trembling claws activating the data chip. A single line of text flashed across the main display pulled from ancient human military archives. Laughter is the best medicine. Unless you're the enemy, then it is the last thing you'll hear. The simulation arena hummed with energy, its massive dome flickering between artificial landscapes, dense jungles, urban ruins, the vacuum of space. Federation observers floated in their gravity pods, tentacles and appendages twitching with anticipation. This was the test, the proof, the moment the galaxy would see human optimism for what it really was, a fluke. Captain Ryan Blake adjusted his gum with his tongue, rolling his shoulders as the countdown ticked above. His squad, 12 human Marines in light tactical gear, stood relaxed behind him. No armor, no heavy weapons, just standard issue rifles and the kind of grins that made the Krellian delegation hiss. Across the arena, Champion Zoroth flexed his forearms, his chitinous plates gleaming under the artificial sun. His shock troops, 30 of the Federation's finest, were armed to the teeth, their plasma casters humming, their armored tails lashing. Pathetic, Zoroth sneered, his voice amplified across the arena. You come with this? No shields, no artillery, just smiles. Blake spat his gum into his palm, stuck it under the edge of a console, and cracked his knuckles. Yep, the countdown hit 0. The Krellians moved first, a perfectly coordinated assault, fanning out in textbook formation. Plasma fire scorched the air, cutting off escape routes, herding the humans into a kill zone. Blake didn't flinch, he just tapped his earpiece. Playtime, kids. The Marines scattered. Not a way through. They sprinted into the plasma fire, weaving between shots like it was a game. Private Jenkins actually laughed as he somersaulted under a blast, coming up with his rifle already barking. Zoroth snarled, signaling his troops to tighten formation. Focus fire, crush them. That's when the arena's lights flickered. The holographic jungle rippled, and suddenly the trees weren't just trees. They were cover, human cover. Blake's team had hacked the simulation mid-battle, reprogramming the environment on the fly. What? Zoroth roared as the ground beneath his feet shifted, dropping him into a pit. Not a deep one, just enough to break his momentum. A Marine Corporal Diaz leaned over the edge, grinning. Tag! She dropped a flashbang in after him. The Krellian troops panicked, their perfect formation collapsing as the humans swarmed them. Not with brute force, with chaos. A private used a bench as a battering ram. Another lobbed a smoke grenade, not to hide but to paint targets, the chemical smoke sticking to armor and highlighting every Krellian in neon pink. Zoroth clawed his way out of the pit just in time to see Blake standing over his last remaining soldier, casually pressing a knife to the Krellian's throat. Yield, Blake said, cheerful. The arena's systems blared, simulation terminated. Victory, human forces. Time elapsed. Fey minutes, Fey seconds, silence. Then, laughter. Not from the observers from the Marines. They were clapping each other on the back, swapping jokes like they'd just won a pickup game. Zoroth staggered to his feet, his exoskeleton quivering with rage. This is impossible, you cheated. Blake raised an eyebrow. Cheated? Nah, we optimized. He gestured to the replay screens where the battle was already looping. See, you guys fight like it's math. Steps, rules, we fight like it's life. On the screens, the Marines moved in ways that made no tactical sense, until you saw the result, a grenade tossed backward to flush out flankers. a rifle used as a melee weapon to trip a Krellian into his own ally's line of fire. Dr. Carter, watching from the observation deck, smirked. That's not insanity, folks. That's ingenuity. High Scholar Yillis Frills trembled. But the odds? We're against us, Blake finished, stretching his arms behind his head. Yeah, always are. That's the fun part. The Krellians were still staring, their mandibles slack the humans. They were already heading for the exit, laughing. One Marine, Private Riley, paused just long enough to wink at Zorath. Better luck next war, champ. The archives of the Galactic Federation were never meant to be seen by outsiders. The vaults stretched for kilometers beneath the Senate chambers, rows of glowing data crystals humming with forbidden knowledge. Archivist T-Vex antennae twitched as he led Ambassador Park through the dimly lit corridors, his chitinous fingers trembling over the security panel. You understand, T-Vex whispered, his voice a series of clicks. Showing you this is treason. Naomi Park smirked, her fingers tapping idly against her coffee mug. And yet, here we are. The insectoid hesitated, his compound eyes darting to the security drones hovering near the ceiling. The Federation has curated history. Some truths are deemed too dangerous. Funny, Naomi said, leaning against a console. Humans have a saying about that. History is written by the victors. Tech's mandibles clenched. There were no victors in the Purge Wars, only survivors. Naomi's smile didn't waver. Show me. With a shuddering breath, Tefek input his clearance codes. The central holoprojector flickered to life, casting eerie blue light across the vault. Images resolved ancient battleships, scorched planets, fleets locked in combat. But these weren't the sanitized records the Federation taught its young. The footage showed human warships singing. Not distress signals, not tactical chatter, singing. The USN Jerusalem's crew bellowed a raucous chanty as they rammed a Krellian dreadnought, their hulls buckling in a fiery embrace. The Morning Star's gunners whooped with laughter as they unleashed a full broadside, their voices rising above the thunder of railguns. And then, the worst of it, a classified log from the siege of Vexis Prime. Human Admiral Kovalov's face filled the screen, his grin wild, his eyes alight. Behind him, the bridge crew cheered as targeting locks settled over the planet below. Fire when ready, boys, Kovalov chuckled. Let's give 'em a show. The screen whited out as the planet cracked. Tavek recoiled. You see, this is what the Federation feared. Your species doesn't just fight, you enjoy it. Naomi tilted her head. No, we endure it. She tapped the console, pulling up another file. You ever wonder why we sing? Why we laugh? The screen shifted. A human medic, covered in blood, humming as he stitched a comrade's wounds. A pilot, her fighter crippled, cracking jokes over the comms as she steered into a suicide run. It's not joy, Naomi said softly. It's defiance. You think we're broken because we smile in the dark. That's how we survived. Tech's antennae drooped. The Federation erased these records. They claimed humanity's victories were flukes. Luck, Naomi barked a laugh. Luck, we outlasted you. Every war, every purge. You threw everything at us, and we kept going. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. Know what our first interstellar colony's motto was? Tafek shook his head, laughing in the face of death. The archivist staggered back as the hologram shifted again, showing the final moments of the Battle of Cygnus Reach. Human ships outnumbered 10-1, broadcasting music across all frequencies as they charged. That's not insanity, Naomi said. That's tradition. Tevek's carapace rattled. The Federation never understood. They thought your optimism was a weakness, a flaw to be studied. Naomi's grin turned sharp. And now they'll learn the hard way. The vault's alarms blared. Red lights strobed as security drones surged toward them. Tech's limbs flailed in panic. They know we're here. Naomi didn't move. Relax, Bug. They're not coming for us. The drones froze mid, The alarms cut out. On the central screen, a new transmission flickered to life. Admiral Hayes' face, her smile cold. Ambassador Park, Hayes said. The Defiance is in position. The Federation's about to get a history lesson. Tavek collapsed against the console. What have you done? Naomi sipped her coffee. What we always do. Outside, the orbital defense grid lit up, not with warning shots, with surrender codes. The Federation had studied human optimism. They'd forgotten to study human vengeance. The emergency klaxons wailed through the Federation Council chambers like a dying beast. Senator Vrix's chitinous plates rattled as he gripped the podium, his forearms trembling. The holographic displays flickered with incoming alerts, ship signatures, weapons charging, panic spreading through the orbital defenses. Ambassador Naomi Park stood calmly near the viewing window, her reflection superimposed over the looming shape, now visible beyond the glass. The USN Defiance hung in orbit like a silent predator, its railgun batteries humming with restrained power. You can't do this. Frick screeched, his translator struggling with the pitch. This is a violation of every interstellar treaty. Naomi sipped from her world's best mom mug. Funny, I don't recall treaties protecting us when the Vorik glassed New Sydney. The chamber erupted. Delegates from a dozen species shouted over each other, tentacles flailing, bioluminescent patterns flashing in distress. High Scholar Yillis clutched his robes, his ancient frills pale. You lied to us, he whispered. All this time your optimism wasn't ignorance, it was patience. On the main display, Admiral Lisa Hayes' face appeared, her smirk sharp enough to cut Durasteel. Took you long enough to figure it out. Vrix slammed a fist on the console. You're bluffing. The Defiance wouldn't dare fire on the capital. Hayes leaned closer to the feed. You spent centuries studying us, obsessed over our psychology, but you missed one thing. A new transmission overlaid the screen, security footage from the simulation arena. Captain Blake's team moved in perfect sync, dismantling Krellian defenses while laughing. Then the scene shifted, real battles, human warships singing as they burned through enemy formations, Marines grinning behind their visors while detonating entire fortresses. Naomi set her mug down. You called it excessive optimism. We call it morale warfare. The Defiance's railguns hummed louder. Targeting lasers painted the council station. Yillis staggered back. You were never insane. You were waiting for us to show our hand. Hayes nodded. And now you have. Silence, the weight of centuries of Federation arrogance crashed down. Vrix's mandibles clicked uselessly. Then, laughter from the Defiance's bridge. The crew's voices crackled over comms. Not panic, not fear. Amusement. Hayes grinned. See, that's the thing about humans. You can study our psychology all you want, but you'll never understand why we smile when the odds are impossible. Naomi tapped a command into her wristpad. The Defiance's weapons powered down. Vyrix gasped. You're standing down. Hayes shook her head. No, we're making a point. The view screen split, 1,000 more signatures blinked into existence around the Defiance. Human warships, reinforcements, hidden until now. Optimism isn't denial, Hayes said. It's the belief that no matter how bad things look, we will win, and today. She leaned back in her chair. We just did. The chamber was dead silent. Naomi picked up her mug. So who's ready to renegotiate those treaties? Outside, the human fleet waited patient, smiling.